Hello, everyone, and welcome to the eWorks webinar. We're just getting a few people in now. Some people are upgrading their software to ensure that they have a good experience. Okay, well, let's make a start. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the topic, AI-powered LMS, the future of personalized learning. Just a very quick introduction about me. I work as the service delivery manager here at eWorks. I ensure that basically eWorks meets its service level agreements and offer value-added services to our clients, and of course the renewal of those service agreements. But I also have a keen interest in AI, basically because I began teaching code quite some time ago. I was a TAFE teacher at Box Hill Institute, and I became very, very interested in the learning materials. So I became an instructional designer. So I did that for about 10 years or so. Then after that, became very interested in the learning management system side of it and worked for some publishers. And now I'm here. But if you'd like more information about myself, please don't hesitate to go to the eWorks website and click on the LinkedIn link. Okay, so here we are. I'd just like to get a quick poll for those that attended EduTech recently. Just a very quick poll. So the EduTech conference was just over a week ago. It was a 2-day conference here in Melbourne. And there was a lot of topics on AI. So yeah, just like to get an indication of who attended that conference. And we got about 50% that said, yeah, they've attended, about 50% that said no. So some people have and some people haven't. No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, so about 50% attended the conference and 50% haven't attended the conference. That's okay, that's fine. So basically, we have some experts here. For those that attended the conference recently. So we were very well informed about AI and its role in personalized learning. But I just want to be sure that there's no generative AI replicants here. So we're all real people. That's good. And I'm a real person. Terrific. Well, I would suggest that as we journey down this path, that we remain curious and remember there are no silly questions here, so any time that you want to ask a question, please feel free to just put it in the chat, which is currently being moderated. So again, thank you for joining us this afternoon for this presentation. Before we begin, I'd just like to share with you my own personal reflection about how I arrived at this topic. And I arrived at this topic after some consideration, but consideration about popular themes to talk about, and I prompted Google Gemini, of course, to give me the topic. So that's how I arrived at the topic. But again, I have a keen interest in AI. So the three main areas that I'd like to talk about today are transforming education with AI, the opportunities and challenges with AI, and of course, future directions of AI within education. So how do we transform education with AI? Well, that's been a leading question for many people at present. And I think the best way that I've heard so far to sum it up is by Sal Khan. Now, Sal Khan, for those people that don't know Sal Khan, is the CEO of the Khan Academy. So he basically said that the way that we can transform education using AI is by giving every student on the planet an artificial, intelligent, but amazing personal tutor, and to give every teacher on the planet an amazing, artificially intelligent teaching assistant. So you'll notice that there's two sides, of course. AI in terms of a personal tutor, helping the student, and AI helping the teacher or the facilitator. So those particular comments were explained in his video, how AI could save, not destroy education in a TED talk last year, and I've just got that reference at the bottom of the screen there. So at the recent EduTech conference, he basically alluded to a partnership agreement that the Khan Academy has done with Microsoft. And if you go to this particular article, the reference is on the bottom, it talks about AI in education. So Sal Khan, as the keynote speaker at the EduTech conference, talked about brave new words and how AI will revolutionize education. So this particular article is talking about Microsoft's collaboration with the Khan Academy to develop new AI tools and make them available to educators worldwide. So currently they're available to US teachers, but there is further scope on the horizon to make them available worldwide. So the article explores about how AI can help students learn math in particular in a more engaging and personalized way. And the key points are that, obviously AI can accelerate learning and prepare students for the future and improve efficiency. And they're offering this free access to what they call Canmigo for teachers, which is an AI-powered teaching assistant. So Microsoft and the Khan Academy are developing a new open source language model to improve AI math tutoring. Now, why is this important? Because the emphasis really is on LLMs, large learning models, large learning language models, basically. So AI has often been described as the predictive text on steroids, but it's much, much more than that. If we look at large learning language models, we can quickly understand that there are pools of masses and masses of data. So in the transformation of education, transformation happens on various fronts. So it happens across intelligent tutoring systems, automated content creation, content personalization, student support, accessibility, and grading and assessment. So in terms of intelligent tutoring systems, this is what the Microsoft and the Khan Academy were talking about. They're talking about AI-powered systems which can deliver one-to-one tutoring, providing explanations and examples and practice exercises based on individual needs. So I encourage you all to go into YouTube or search Google about the Khan Academy and how they're actually using this AI-powered intelligent tutoring. In terms of automated content creation, of course, generative AI can create new content, such as quizzes, assignments, and lesson plans, based on existing materials or templates. And it can translate content into multiple languages, making it accessible to a wider audience. In terms of content personalization, of course, generative AI can analyze learner data to create personalized learning paths, ensuring that the content is relevant to the individual needs and interests of that learner. And AI-powered assessments can adjust difficulty levels based on the learner performance, providing a more engaging and effective learning experience. So in terms of student support, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute, further into the presentation. In terms of accessibility, of course, AI can break down language barriers, making education more accessible with different native languages. And it can support, obviously, students with the disabilities, such as speech to text and text to speech, and of course, image recognition. and also greatly assist with grading and assessment. So when it comes to looking at the LMS and generative AI tools, we can see a number of different LMS systems here. And you'll notice that the generative AI tools can either be outside of the LMS or they can be inside the LMS. So when we talk about generative AI tools, we talk about whether they're integrated via API, via an API integration. So the integration can happen through APIs that allowing data to be shared and processed seamlessly through those API integrations, or they can be standalone tools. So those standalone applications also can be integrated into the LMS system through various methods, such as embedding or linking. So a quick poll here. What AI tools are you currently using? There are all sorts of AI tools specifically for educators in the marketplace, and I'm very curious to understand what current AI tools are you currently using. So if you attended the recent EduTech conference, there are a number of software providers spruiking their wares. Some of them provided additional software which was AI-based. Some of it was inside the LMS, some of it was outside the LMS. And I'm just curious to see the engagement with those tools at the moment. I'll have a quick look at the chat and see what sort of results. Here we go. Copilot, ChatGPT, AI Detector, Petal. So some of those tools are known, and some are less well known, such as Petal. But there are a plethora. There are many different AI tools which are available in the marketplace. Research Rabbit. Okay, terrific. Okay, so there are some of the tools currently that are being used in the marketplace at the moment. So we're still at the very early stages of understanding these tools and actually using the tools. So let's just take an example of tools which exist outside the LMS. And here I've just got a screenshot of a company called Teachermatic. I call this standalone tools. And you can see here that on the left-hand side, you can see the generators, but also you can see the different sectors these generators are applied to. So primary, secondary, vocational, and higher education. So within this tool, and it's widely available, and you can actually use this tool for free within a certain generating a few of the different results here. For example, lesson plan, chat with Teachermatic AI, the PowerPoint presentation, multiple choice questions, learning activities, etc., etc. So you can actually use this tool based on what particular sector that you're in, whether in primary, secondary, or vocational, and it will adjust the response accordingly. So it's a very powerful tool to use, and obviously saves time for the teacher in actually creating lesson plans and PowerPoint presentations, etc., etc. So these sort of teaching and learning generators make it easier to create really high quality resources without spending hours and hours on research and design. So you input your topic, and the tools will generate a variety of materials, such as I said, lesson plans, activities, worksheets, and more. So you may not want to use a tool such as this. You may want to just go to the ChatGPT or Gemini, etc., to prompt AI to generate the materials for you. Questions. So don't hesitate to put in the chat questions. Remember, this is an interactive session. There are no silly questions. So some questions, haven't tried it yet, but there's another tool called Synthesia. What is the name of the tool you just had on your screen? It's called Teachermatic. Google Teachermatic. You can go directly there, or you can go to YouTube and it'll give you a bit of an overview about Teachermatic and the tools that it has. But as I said, there are many different tools on the marketplace. I've got a question for the audience, and my question is, how much is AI a drunken intern? So what I mean by that is AI there simply just to please us with the right answers, or the answers that we think that we want? So my question to the audience is, how much is AI a drunken intern? Okay, one of the responses that it can be, if we're too general in the direction. In other words, it can be if we ask general questions of it. Yes, you're a drunken intern, just wants to please us. Only if the user is drunk also. Absolutely. My other question to the audience is, and this came up in the conference as well, is AI just predictive text on steroids? Way too simplistic? No. Too complex for me to even know the answer to that one? It's more than that. Definitely is much more than just predictive text. When you look at the complexity of information that's available and the complexity of information that can be delivered. So I noticed one of the answers, or one of the things that came up in the text, was garbage in equals garbage out. And it's still very much the same with the AI tools. If you don't put the right information in, if you don't prompt correctly, then you're not going to get suitable information back out. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to some opportunities and challenges. So I know that's not a very good picture. However, it's just a photograph which I took at the EdTech conference, and it was in a session by UNSW. And UNSW, the session was basically about streamlining support at UNSW. It was talking about chatbots and AI. So UNSW have embarked upon this journey where they see large amounts of data being available to students on various places. For example, their website, within an existing chat function, through frequently asked questions. And they realized that all this information was scattered. And so students found it particularly difficult to get simple answers back on, things like how they're going with their course, and when's the next exam, and how, what's the percentage rating of the assessments in the next exam. So what they decided to do is have a look at all of that data which the students access and put it into a massive data pool. So that data pool can be determined as a large learning language model. So what they did next was they used various tools to collate that information. So how they did that was they used various tools. One of them was called Copilot Studio, and the another one was called Azure AI Services. Now, you've heard of Microsoft Copilot. Now, Copilot Studio is basically building your own custom copilots. And Azure AI Services basically helps developers rapidly create applications which are out of the box with customizable APIs and different models. So it's basically building your own learning language model, which is the basis of how we integrate the LMS into a meaningful association with AI. So that becomes all very well and good, and they're continuing upon their learning journey, getting very good results. But the questions remain typically around the next few points. That is about accuracy and reliability, bias, and privacy and security, and the ethical implications. So in terms of accuracy and reliability, remember before I talked about the drunken intern, it's always there to please us. And we have these effects called bias and hallucinating. So you might often come across these terms of bias and hallucinating when we put a prompt into ChatGPT or Gemini, for example. We'll get a response back, but we may not get a truthful response, or we might get a biased response. So these large language models can generate incorrect or misleading information. So that's where the human is involved. So it's crucial to verify what the output is. So in terms of accuracy and reliability, the human is paramount in understanding what the output is. Is it biased? Is it just a hallucinogenic answer? Only the human can determine that. So in terms of bias, these large learning models can perpetuate bias, and you really require monitoring and some sort of mitigation strategy when you encounter that bias. So I remember looking at generating images, for example, using AI. And if you asked AI to generate an image of a doctor, for example, 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, it would generate an image of a male doctor, Caucasian. So you've definitely got to look at the bias part of the input equation. Privacy and security. Of course, protecting student data is paramount, and you've got to put in some security measures in place. And I'll talk a little bit further about that shortly. There's also the ethical implications. The use of AI in education raises, of course, ethical questions about authenticity, cheating, and, of course, the role of human interaction. So there were some recent articles in Melbourne Uni, about the use of AI in students submitting assignments, and they basically have to go to a board which vets whether something has been generated by AI or not. So again, the human interaction is very important. Challenges. So again, I noticed at the conference there are huge challenges with AI, and this, again, I took a quick photograph of a presentation there from TAFE New South Wales, and it was all about their action plan, their generative AI action plan. And their action plan was centered around five key areas. And this is even before they give the green light to use AI willy-nilly. They're basically saying that in order to use generative AI, we need some sort of action plan where we look at the learner experience and acceptable usage of AI. What is acceptable usage of AI, and how do we monitor that? The next thing is around course design and to embed generative AI skills. Now, anyone can go to a site such as Teachermatic and ask it to produce all these different learning materials. However, to use those learning materials effectively, of course, you've got to understand, the paradigms of pedagogy as well as course creation. So using generative AI in the tools, for example, in authoring tools, is something that is continually being used, but also continually being sort of monitored. So course design to embed generative AI skills. We can't rely upon AI just to develop PowerPoints for us. We need the understanding, the pedagogy to inform our AI generative output. The next one is the review and redesign of learning and assessment. So we can use AI to develop quizzes, for example, but again, we have to understand how those quizzes are being produced and whether it's generative AI that are producing the quizzes, or is it a human producing those quizzes using generative AI. So there are various risks, academic integrity risks, and to look at all those different risks, one has to look at also the educator capability. So we're still at the very start of the learning curve in terms of our educator capability. Not every educator has instructional design skills, for example. Not every educator will know their learning management system in and out and use the tools effectively. And the final part of their action plan was around monitoring and governance. So there are tools out there which detect AI within student assignments, for example. So it's important that we realize the challenges even before we start to use all the tools at our disposal. Questions? So obviously there are great challenges around AI, especially from a policy point of view. And it's important to realize that, people have thought about putting an action plan in place around generative AI. And, they start looking at things like the challenges I've just discussed, acceptable usage, the design, where the educators are, etc., etc. Any queries or questions? Are we focusing too much on how to detect AI instead of focusing on creating more practical assessments? Not so much. I think, again, we're still at the very early stages of using AI. And I think that there isn't widespread use of AI-assisted tools at the moment, basically because we've got to get our framework in place. Any tool has its pros and cons. AI is just another one coming into the scene. Time will teach us to use it appropriately. Yep, and there was a whole session on that at the conference about where we are at in terms of our adoption of AI. Do we think the government will provide an overarching approach or framework for education organizations to follow? That's a good question. So that's a good segue into the next heading that I'd like to talk about, and that is around future directions. So future directions within education. One of the sessions at the conference was talking around about future directions in AI and education, and it was talking around about a framework, and the education department has come up with a document called the Australian Framework for Generative Artificial Intelligence in Schools. Now, this is applicable, I believe, not only to schools but also the vocational sector, the university sector. And the framework seeks to guide the responsible and ethical use of generative AI tools. So that's the future direction of AI within education. It's around the responsible and ethical use of the tools themselves. And if we look at that a little bit more closely, we can see that there's 6 underlying principles that they discuss in the framework about the ethical use of generative AI. They talk about the privacy, security, and safety issues of using generative AI. We've already seen some large breaches of privacy and security and safety already with AI, with students, developing nude images, for example, and distributing those, hacking of various databases and using those profiles on other websites, etc. Teaching and learning with generative AI, that's one of the underlying principles, is to look at the teaching and learning in terms of how are we going to uplift the teaching and learning, how are we going to uplift our educators, how are we going to educate our educators about these tools. Human and social well-being, underlying principle of using generative AI, using it for good, not for evil. So using generative AI for good, for human and social well-being. Transparency, the underlying principle of transparency is ensuring that we are transparent in how we use generative AI. Fairness, providing equal opportunity for not only our students, but also our educators about the use of generative AI, but also the content that it produces. And of course, accountability as an underlying principle of using generative AI, being accountable for what is produced. Okay, all right. And as a quick summary of this session, so basically the session covered 3 areas: transforming education within AI, opportunities and challenges and future directions of AI in education. Now, each of those areas in itself are topics that you could spend at least 45 minutes on in the future. So I've only briefly touched each of those topics. But when we look at transforming education with AI, we look at giving every student a facilitator or a personal tutor, as I mentioned within the Khan Academy, and giving every teacher an artificially intelligent teaching assistant. So on the student side and on the teacher side. So looking at it from both directions and understanding that the way that we can transform education is the development of these open sourced language models. That's the way that we can revolutionize the learning experience, especially with the LMS, is to have the APIs and connect those to those large learning models. Opportunities and challenges. There are sufficient opportunities with AI and all the different AI tools. I mentioned just a couple of tools within this presentation, but some are more advanced than others. Some institutions are more advanced than others. University of New South Wales, for example, have done a fairly deep dive into refining their chatbot, which they've refined, over the COVID period into something that's really quite amazing. And that's an opportunity that they're pursuing. The challenges, of course, are around the accuracy and reliability and around bias. And as I mentioned before, hallucinating, being aware that any predictive model is capable of bias and providing an incorrect answer as well. We talked about privacy and security and the ethical implications around authenticity and the role of human interaction. And finally, we looked at the future directions of AI within education, and I alluded to the principles, or I alluded to a framework, which is the Australian framework for generative AI in schools, and looking at the 6 principles to guide responsible use of generative AI. And finally, the recording. Yes, a recording will be made available. The slides will be made available as well. We'd like to thank everyone for coming along and joining us for this webinar. The next webinar will be immersive learning experiences with extended reality on 19th of September. Please, that'll be with Jessie Harrison, who's our corporate courseware lead. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any queries or questions around the webinar, or if you have any queries or questions around the topic that's just been presented. Okay, and a big shout out to our business development team. Please get in touch with us to see how we can create the right learning solution for you. Don't hesitate to contact our business development team. And again, I'd like to thank you very, very much for your time, and I hope you got something out of this webinar. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thanks very much again.